The thing that makes us special is that we are able to take and mark symbols and squiggly lines so that we understand what those lines mean and can make sense of them. We can actually put them together and form ideas and form concepts and even longer things such as stories. This is the beauty of language. This is why I really love the whole concept of being able to put together ideas with simply lines and marks. It's something that no other species does. There are some conjectures that other species can communicate, but not quite the way that we do as human beings, particularly with language. And this exploration of language is something that's been really defining for us as human civilization. We've developed specific rules of how things are put together and why they're put together so that we can agree on specified meaning. When you look at nonfiction writing and fiction writing, one of the attractions for fiction writing for me is the ability to break those rules. We have expectations, and when you write nonfiction writing, the expectation is that you're going to follow some sort of academic model or linguistic consistency to be able to demonstrate a perfection of knowledge. Fiction is so much more fluid. Today on punkwrite, we're going to take a look at how can you use broken pieces of language and broken pieces of meaning, particularly in the fragment, so that you can create effect in your fiction writing. Don't go anywhere. What I'd like to do is to take a look at some specific examples of how fragments can be used in fiction writing, and we'll analyze their purpose and how they're used effectively to create better flow. But keep in mind always that anything that you do in writing must be appropriate and it must be used parsimoniously. It should be used the right amount so that you don't overuse the effect. Any kind of overuse, whether it be metaphors or fragments, simply detracts and becomes a bit onerous when you read it. So let's take a look at some specific examples right now. Let's go. Again, we're going to take a look at using fragments for effect in your writing, and this is some of the liberty that we have when doing fiction writing, and done correctly can really add a lot to your writing piece. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. First one I call the descriptive fragment, and this is just adding a piece of information that adds an effect that may not be necessarily the same effect if you were to just put it in a positive phrase. In the upper rafters, the mildew caked over in a thick glaze, a dank corner of neglect. This was par for the course in the apartment, which hadn't been cleaned for ages. So you can see a dank corner of neglect is the fragment, and technically it is in a positive phrase, and you could put it next to the noun that it corresponds to, which is the upper rafters, but somehow it would just interrupt that flow. You use that decision as an author to create the effect that you want. The second I called a single word fragment, and this I use with some frequency because it does have the effect on the reader in the sense that you focus strictly on the single word that you're looking at. Let's take a look. Pain. There was no other feeling that interrupted that singular, twisting sensation wrenched around his heart. I feel like isolating that word, even though it's not a complete sentence, it is a full and complete idea. This is something that I find very effective. There's also what is called the narrative fragment, and this is added from a point of view, and if the narrator is offering some piece of observation, this is a good way to use this fragment. Let's take a look. His wife shook his shoulder, hidden under the single bed sheet that covered him. She was dressed for the morning and nothing else. The casual slacks and old t-shirt pocketed with pin-sized moth holes, not clothes to leave the apartment in. You can see that last phrase is just kind of an idea that the narrator puts in as an added perspective about the scene or the situation itself. It's pretty effective. Lastly, the same can be done for individual characters in terms of providing some point of view of a thought or a perspective that the character holds. Occasionally, another person circulated behind the tellers, appearing from behind a closed door to speak in short bursts and check over their shoulders or examine their numbers. A manager, no doubt. The man did not smile. There you see a manager, no doubt. This is actually in the character's mind, and it's the same type of effect that gives you in terms of that information that's being transposed to the reader. That's it for today on punkwrite. Thanks for joining us. Hope you got something useful out of this section. If you have any questions or doubts, feel free to leave some comments and subscribe to the channel if you've not already. Until then, you just keep on writing, because that's what we do on punkwrite. Just write, punkwrite.